Hello and welcome to the Home Edify podcast. My name is Kristin. Edify means to teach or instruct so as to improve the mind and character. And here we talk about what it takes to raise courageous, resilient, lifelong learners. If you are new here, I just want to say welcome. Thank you so much for listening. I know as a mom of three, as a wife, as a homemaker, I know that our lives are full of busyness and hurry. And so I just want to say the fact that you took the time to listen to this podcast means so much. So welcome. Thank you so much for listening. If you are a steady listener, I would just love to encourage you to leave a review. It helps other moms find this podcast that may need the encouragement. My prayer is always that you are sanctified, that your homes are edified, and that Jesus is glorified. And I'm so thankful that you guys show up to listen week after week. Now, last week, I went MIA. I did not post an episode like I normally do, and I am totally cool with that. There are going to be times I don't show up, guys. And out of all of my priorities, obviously my family is number one. I enjoyed so much time last week with my family, and the bandwidth to get in a podcast episode was just not possible. And I'm totally fine with that. While I want to show up here and serve you guys, my family is my top priority. And then my local ministry of just loving on people and serving within my community. And then this is my creative outlet that allows me to serve you guys and allows me to build community, allows me to learn, allows you to learn. But on my list of priorities, it does fall kind of last. So if there's a ball that's going to drop, this is probably going to be it. But I am so thankful that you guys continue to just keep showing up and listening. So thank you for that. Guys, this week's podcast is incredible. Julianne Neinberg is a friend of mine. She is also the mom behind My Outdoorsy Mom. She recently has started a podcast. It's called the My Outdoorsy Mom podcast. And in it, she shares all kinds of tips of how to get your kids outside on her Instagram, in her podcast, in all of her social media profiles. She is someone who is providing tips to get parents outside with their kids in ways that you would never expect. She is an advocate for low screens, and she is someone that is just constantly adding more and giving more to the internet, tips, tricks. Whether you're a traveling family, whether you're a family that wants to get outside, whether you're someone that just needs some extra activities for your kids, the resources she provides are so crucial and pivotal in this time and age that we live in, where a lot of us are in an HOA, or maybe we're in an apartment building with our young kids. She gives you the tips and tricks to get your kids outside, even in those circumstances. So I am sure that you're going to leave here edified, encouraged, and honestly, it was just a privilege to get to know Julianne. We have been friends on Instagram for a while, and she is the biggest encourager and advocate for other moms, and she is definitely someone that will build you up in your motherhood journey. So I am so honored and privileged to be able to say that she is the guest for this week's podcast. So let's get to it. Julianne, welcome to the podcast. So Julianne is with My Outdoorsy Mom. Julianne, can you tell me just a little bit about your Instagram account, your new podcast, which has recently launched at the time that we're recording this, which is super exciting. So tell me more about you, your purpose, and your mission.
Yeah, so I started My Outdoorsy Mom just over a year ago, and really it was a platform in place to inspire and encourage moms to get outside and to enjoy nature wherever their feet were. I know we'll get a little bit more into it later on, but we have just such a fun story to share in terms of how we started our outdoorsy journey, I'll say, and how we just kind of have transformed our family, and my children have really just grown up and transformed into these little people who crave being outside and who really flourish when they're outside. I always say they are their best selves when they're outside because they're free, they have unstructured time out there, and it is fun to watch their creativity and desire to be in nature really grow as they've gotten older. And so I wanted to create a space where I could share tips on things that we've learned along the years, and how to get outside, how to stay outside, and how to also foster a curiosity and wonder for nature and for God's creation, and to also help parents and teach parents how to incorporate some of these independent outdoor play skills early on. It can start as early as even infancy and early toddlerhood. So that's kind of my big passion, and the hill I'm willing to die on, I'll say, is that independent outdoor play can start as early as infancy and toddlerhood, and that these are skills that will carry our kids for a lifetime. The ability to go outside and to play with whatever is around them, and to not rely on devices, to not rely on toys and constant entertaining, but to be content and to find joy in nature around them.
That is so good. That is so good. Especially in a screen heavy world. Sometimes us as parents, like we need that push to like, okay, go outside with your kids. So you said you can do it during infancy. What did that look like with your 3 kids? Because your 3 kids, they start at 7, right? What are the ages of your kids?
My kids, well, by the time they'll be 8, 6, and 4.5. So I'll be honest that my outdoorsy journey, right, with my kids didn't really start, or at least the intentionality of getting them outside didn't really start until I had my 3rd. Up until then, I was a full-time working mom. I was just kind of doing the grind, as, people say, and I just knew that there was more to going to work, racing to go pick up my kids from daycare, and getting them outside for as little as 5 minutes. And, they were at daycare, at least my first 2 were at daycare. And it happened kind of during a season. It happened in winter, actually. And I read a book called There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. And it just clicked for me. I loved how the author wrote about how in Scandinavian culture, parents had their kids outside from infancy. Kids were sleeping in their prams and their strollers outside while parents were, going out to lunch. It's just the things that you wouldn't hear and you wouldn't find here in the United States. And it was really kind of just this impetus of, I crave and desire for my children to not only be outside more, but to appreciate what God has created in its beautiful simplicity, to not need things in order to have a good time outside, but that they can create their own fun with a little creativity. And so to answer your question, I mean, my kids, gosh, when we started, I had 2 toddlers and a baby, and I wouldn't say I grew up outdoorsy. I have fond memories of outdoor moments, but I was an only child. And I think a lot of my creativity came from being an only child and having to find things to fill my time and not having siblings to rely on. But when my kids were younger, it was just that season of life that we were in, and everything just felt so rushed. And my kids were, we were relying on screen time to get us through the day. It was like from the moment we woke up, the TV would go on as I'd be cooking breakfast. And then it was a fight to get them to the breakfast table because they were watching screens and they were getting cranky and they were so little and their brains are still developing. They weren't able to process, we're turning the TV off now in order to eat. And then as soon as I'd come home, it was turning the TV on to, have my kids sit in front of the couch or sit on the couch in front of the TV while I prepared dinner. And so I just felt this tug and knew that I wanted more for their childhood, right? I didn't even, at that time we didn't have books like The Anxious Generation, or we didn't have things that were, at least I didn't feel like I had enough information and data that was glaringly obvious to point that screens that we need to be minimizing. And really, I don't even want to say that we need to be minimizing our screen time, but it was that book that really just sparked this fire in me to get my kids outside more, get myself outside more, because we all needed a breath of fresh air. And for us, it was in the winter time. So that's kind of what started our journey, is reading this book by Linda. I think it's Linda McGurk Akeson. Anyways, she's a fabulous writer of this book. She's also wrote another book called The Open Air Life, I believe. And it was just hearing how the Scandinavian culture embraced this slower lifestyle and this lifestyle that prioritized being outside. And I said, I want to do that. Up until that point, I wasn't really prioritizing outdoor time. If it was cold, and here in Michigan, it gets very cold, we were inside. And so suddenly I had this just push to pick my kids up from daycare. I'd rush to get them home, and it was winter time. So I would spend probably 15 minutes getting winter gear on my kids, back on my kids, just to go outside for another 15 minutes. And it was building this routine or this rhythm consistently and just we just continued to do it. And we naturally started to build this daily rhythm where getting outside after mom came home from work just became a part of our routine. And it's funny to think back on it now because there were so many moments where my kids were little. I think I had a 3-year-old and an 18-month-old. And the 18-month-old really didn't have a clue what was going on. I would just say, like, we're going outside, we're going to do this, and we're going to stay outside for 15 minutes. And they had no concept of time, but I would set this timer that I had, and it would say 15 minutes. And so my 3-year-old knew, what it meant. It's when the red was up and the timer went off, we could go back inside. But the first few days of us doing that, we'd all just kind of stand around and look at each other. My kids would look at me like, aren't you going to do something for me? Like, aren't you going to play with me or, make some activity for me? And it was wintertime. I'm like, no, I'm not making an activity out in the wintertime. So we just kind of stood around, like hands in our pockets, looking at each other. And then as a few days went on, I decided to come back inside the house because I really wanted them to just kind of like, I don't know, for lack of better words, but to kind of figure it out. I'm like,
Mm.
I had a 3-year-old and I can see the way that our home is set up. Our patio, we have a sliding door there and I can see right onto the patio from a window over my kitchen sink. So I could supervise them. And again, it was 15 minutes. And at that point in time, they weren't running around the yard. They were just sticking close by and they would also peer their little eyes in the glass. Like, can we come in yet?
Oh,
And I'd
yeah.
show them the timer and I'd say, no, not yet. It's not time yet. And, some might have a differing opinion about that, but that's how we got started. And it was just continuing to do that day in and day out. And I think it was truly after 2 weeks, they got a lot more independent. They got a lot more confident in their surroundings. And we'd have to set boundaries, but that was kind of what it took to let them to let their creativity flourish. Once they got outside, they're like, oh, there's sticks out here. There's snow out here. Like we can start to build things. And I just love that, they looked around at what they had and they started to make their own fun. And they, as siblings, and of course, this is special for me to observe and watch because I was an only child, but they started to have their own like language and their own understanding of how to play with each
Mhm.
other, just the two of them outside. So to see these play schemes form and to see, how they interacted with one another and how they sought to make their own fun outside was a joy and a blessing to watch. It was really fun to see how they just got creative.
That is super cool. I do the same thing now. So, like, my house is set up where every single part of the house has a door to the outside. So you can always see outside, which is awesome. That's why we chose this particular house. But I do the same thing. I kick them out, and then a little while later, I'll see little hands. But if you wait long enough, they figure it
Hmm.
out all on their own, just like you're talking about. That is super cool. It teaches them what, like, contentedness. I mean, it teaches them
Yes.
curiosity. That's super cool. So you live in Michigan, getting kids outside. So you weren't providing like these big activities for them to do outside. You were basically like, "Hey, go explore. Go do that."
I think back to it now and I had to ask myself, I'm like, did I do activities? Because, I think now I create this monthly activity guide for parents. And I feel like it's all the things that I wish I could have thought of at
Mm.
that time, or I wish somebody would have said, like, hey, here are just some simple prompts. They don't even have to be activities because you can go down the Pinterest rabbit hole and everything looks great, right? Like it always does on
Mm.
Pinterest. Everything looks great. And then you read the description and you're like, 10 steps in, you're like, oh, I don't want to have to go to the craft store to get supplies for them to play outside. I really wanted to avoid that. And so in the beginning, especially because it was wintertime, I did not do any activities. The activities were there's snow and you have a little baby like Fisher Price slide. You can explore and, experiment with some risky play and climbing up the slide. Cause at the time, my middle was 18 months old. So I'm like, you can climb up that slide and go down the slide. Other than that, it was basically just kind of finding things that were outside. As we got closer to the summer weather and warmer weather, I do recall having just activities, really basic things like painting a box. My kids loved, at one point we got new patio furniture and the patio furniture boxes were at least 5 or 6 feet tall. And so
Mm.
that was their play for a good week. We kept that box outside and they painted it. They opened it up. It became a tent. It became shelter. And it was, if I did do activities, it was really, really simple because at the time I had 3 kids under 3.5, and I just did not have the bandwidth to be creating outdoor sensory bins or really just having much mental capacity to do anything
Oh
else.
yeah.
So the nature, it was the entertainment. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is that God has created so many beautiful, simple sensory experiences that are so rich for young children and that help to develop, not only socially and emotionally, but just hearing the sounds of the wind and feeling the wind or feeling the texture of grass and tree bark. Those are all such rich sensory experiences, and they don't require you to go shopping, at a craft store for any of that stuff.
Oh yeah, God's already provided it right there for you. That's
Yes,
awesome.
absolutely.
So what did you see as you continued to push your kids more outside? And what has that done and what has it done for your family at
Mhm.
this point so many years later?
Yeah, we are in such a sweet season of life where I can really see the fruits of those efforts in terms of getting them. I mean, I can remember there are so many bike rides or so many scooter rides where I'm carrying two scooters on the handlebar of my stroller. My kids are in the
Mhm.
wagon, or two of them are trying to squeeze into the stroller, or maybe three of them. I had a double seater, and so I had one in the front. We called it the captain's seat, and then two side by side. And then I was carrying two scooters down the way. And I'm in a season of life where I can look back and just see how that consistency really not only kind of set the tone for them and let them know that this is a priority for our family, that this is, there have been seasons where we have said no, or I've said no to organized sports or other kind of extracurricular extra activities because I valued and wanted them to, like you said, be content with what they have and what's around them. And we started out with a yard in Chicago when my kids were born that was the size of a postage stamp. And so as a couple, my husband and I, we prioritized more land. And now my kids have the ability to roam and to explore. And there are many days now where they just walk outside. It's kind of like an open door policy, where they can walk into the backyard and they have nothing in their hands. They don't carry toys out there. They don't carry a single thing. And they can be out there for an hour just finding things to explore. They're finding leaves, they're finding sticks to play with, and they're creating their own little world. Like my daughter, we have a mud kitchen that we built several years ago, and we got it from neighbors in our local Buy Nothing group. They were getting rid of some pallets, and I said, I want those. And of course, I had my husband nail the pallets together to create our mud kitchen. And then I just thrifted some pots and pans, extra pots and pans from the thrift store. And to this day, my 7-year-old will still play at that mud kitchen for hours. She's concocting soups out of dirt and daisies and, dandelions. And the creativity that I've seen flourish in my children is it's insurmountable. It's a blessing. It is just a joy to watch them go outside together with nothing in hand and to create a beautiful game, and it's fun because it's their own little world, and I'm not privy to any of it, right? Because they're all just playing together, and sometimes they wander into the woods, and I'm okay with that because I can still see them. And they've created their own world. My daughter calls it Terabithia, and they have different parts of the woods, and they call it Deer Path Village, and there's another section of the woods, and it feels like such a rich childhood. It's
Oh yeah.
to have to have one another, as siblings, and to engage in that kind of unstructured free play and using their imaginations and creativity. I mean, that's what I desired for my children. I think what makes my outdoorsy mom resonate with so many parents is that, and the tips that I share is that I think a lot of parents are desiring that for their kids too. We've had screens long enough now to understand and to see the damage that it's doing to development, to brain development, to social development, to emotional maturity and emotional development. And, we have a large body of evidence, right, that shows
Mm.
how damaging screen time can be. And I'm not knocking screen time because we have our family movie nights. We try to use screen time now as an intentional way to connect or just to kind of settle in as a family. So we have our Friday night movie nights.
Us
But
too.
all week long, yeah, all week long during the school week, it's my kids know, like, the TV doesn't go on Monday through, like, Friday. Friday night, we turn it on, we all sit together, we make popcorn, and it's a way for us to connect and just spend time together that's inside, and they look forward to it, and it's just become a part of our normal routine.
Any suggestions for the mom who's got, like, older kids, who's like, "Okay, I wanna get them outside. I see the detriments." Any advice
Mhm,
for those moms that may be in the postage stamp type
mhm.
yard, but wanting to get their kids to live in nature and appreciate what God has created?
Absolutely. Again, my kids they're all 8 and under, but I talk with a lot of moms who I've had several conversations with moms who have older kids. And I think sometimes we can be the best model, right? I think if our kids see us spending time and prioritizing time outside, um, I think that's so powerful. I think it's important for our kids to see us spending time outside and enjoying it. So there's so often I go and sit outside. And of course, because my kids are still little, they just want to know where I am. So they'll come find me outside. But if you have a kiddo, a child that's older, I think just beginning to model and also continuing to invite them to join you. If they're older, they'll probably say no. I think a lot of it I resonates with me because I have a child who's a strong-willed child. And so they want
Mm,
to be able to do what they want to do and they want to exercise their free will. And there's also a certain degree of them just seeing what I'm doing, and hopefully
mm.
I'm modeling something that they will want to come out and join me. And so it's always an open invitation when I'm going outside, like, you can always come and join me. I'm here. I'm here if you want to come sit with me. And naturally, my kids will come and find me. But also realizing too that you can start small. It doesn't, I think sometimes there's a lot of pressure now. People think, well, we don't have enough time to spend outside. Like if you have
Mm.
5 minutes, or if you have 5 minutes 3 times a day, that's 15 minutes. All
Oh,
of
yeah.
these little opportunities add up. And even like parking the car further away so that you have to walk a little bit more with your family to do some errands, like that all counts. And I think sometimes people get discouraged by statistics and literature and saying, we need to spend this amount of time outside for it to count, or it doesn't. Like you can just go outside, whatever amount of time it is. Start small, start with 5 to 10 minutes. And also, there's so many things that your kids enjoy inside that can be done outside. Outside play doesn't have to be getting muddy, running around. I think eventually it would lead to that. But outdoor play can be reading a book or playing with your magnetiles or playing with Legos or taking a sketchbook and just letting your kids draw outside. And for those moms that maybe like we did, like in our very, very beginnings, we lived in a city. I love that cities have, or at least when we lived in Chicago, they have really increased um, their green spaces, right? So
Mm.
in the city of Chicago, I mean, there was always a forest preserve that, you had to drive to, or maybe you could walk to, but the city parks were some of our favorite places to go. I say we, it was me because I was taking the stroller up there with the kids, but there are so many green spaces now. And I think cities are really committing to increasing green spaces for members in the community and in cities. So I think it just starts small. You get outside for 5 minutes. It might look like sitting on your front stoop. When we lived in the city, my daughter and I, she was a baby, but we would just sit on the front stoop and say hi to the neighbors and wave
No,
hi to them as they walked back and forth from the bus stop to the errands. And it was really sweet and it was simple. That's all we had to do.
that's awesome, dude. I love that. I love the picture of just sitting on the front stoop and like getting to know your community and neighbors. Even that is just a step beyond being in front of a screen for multiple hours
Yes.
in a day, you know?
Yeah.
But dude, that's so good. And so I understand your kids go to a classical school. Is that right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
you are a teacher. You're like a nature
Yes.
teacher. Is that
Yes.
right? Can you tell us more about that? I'm super
Yeah.
curious.
Oh, I mean, it is just such a sweet way that the Lord has provided a way for me to be a part of my kids' day. They attend a classical school that is a Bible-based, like Christian curriculum. And I love its beginnings because it started as 4 or 5 homeschooling families who had a
Mm,
heart and desire for their kids to learn from a classical curriculum that taught the Bible as well. So to have a faith-based, Christ-centered curriculum that was also classical in nature. And so I'll be honest, before my kids went there, I had no clue what classical education was. I had read a few Charlotte Mason books, and, I know that they're very kind of in line or have, similar principles, but I had toyed around with the idea of homeschooling. But when we found this school, it was just such a perfect fit for us. And truly, I believe God provided a way for us and my kids to be there. And last year, I ran a nature camp. I volunteered to run a nature camp for the kids. It was like 3 days, and it was a success. I had another mom help me, and we ran that for 3 days in the summer last year. And so then the principal of their school contacted me and said, "We have some needs, a gap that needs to be filled, and we thought that you would be great for this." And I said, "Absolutely." It gets me in the school during the day. I get to teach my oldest and her class, and so I teach 2 grades, and they join together. Um, and it's just been such a blessing to be a part of their day and to also have the opportunity to give these kids like kind of an extra bonus recess. And to also work with the staff and administration who are very supportive and understanding and really down with the cause for getting kids outside more and getting kids, giving them opportunities for unstructured play outdoors during the day. Because a lot of times what we hear, and I think what I'm hearing more of too, is that school recesses are like 20 to 30 minutes long. And
Yeah.
when you have kids that are going to school in places that are cold, like 30 minutes is not enough. And kids are bouncing off the walls and just begging to have room to run and to just have these big, gross motor movements. And so, when I teach at the kids' school, by the time I'm with them, it's like their third time going outside. So it's been a
That's awesome.
blessing. I teach like a nature-based, faith-based curriculum. It's a quick class. It's less than an hour, but today we just did 10 minutes of sit spot. And so they're older, they're first and second graders, but we did 10 minutes of sit spot, and I had all of them bring out their composition books. And I said, we're going to sit, we're going to show self-control. That means we're not disrupting anyone else's space. We're all going to find our own space to do sit spot, show self-control, and to draw and observe whatever's going on in nature around us. And so at the end of 10 minutes, we all gathered together, and I had everybody hold their composition books up to show each other what they had drawn, what they had written, if some of them wrote poems and just like kind of some free writing. And it was just really sweet because they have this opportunity to get outside and to be intentionally seeking God everywhere, right? On the playground, in the soccer
Absolutely.
field, out in the woods. And it's been a real fun and blessing. I'm really happy that God just made a way for that to happen.
That is super cool. Oh my goodness. Well, and okay, because I'm curious, and I know there may be some moms too, and I've asked you some questions about this before in the past, but classical education, what does that look like for your kiddos? And how have you seen nature play a role? I know you teach that class, but even for just your
Mhm,
individual kiddos of like
mhm,
having things stick, how have you seen that
mhm.
correlate together?
I think what I appreciate about the classical curriculum is its intent is to expose kids to what is true, what is good, and what's beautiful from a Christ-centered perspective, right? In
Mhm.
that God is working in math. God orders the seasons. God orders numbers. In every single way, God is involved. And I love that at my kids' school, they are getting to learn that God is in everything. He's in language. He's in, not just in our nature class, but I love that there's that focus of not just a classical curriculum. So in terms of literature and arts and things like that, but also from a Christ-centered perspective and from a Christ-centered being able to see through the lens of what God created, and that my kids have the opportunity to learn in that way is such a blessing. I mean, our school, we were really blessed to discover our school, and it's pretty much in our backyard. So we are so lucky
That's cool.
to have that. It's wonderful. It's a small school community, so at times it really does feel like a small, tight knit, like homeschool community. It's a great way to really feel connected with the families. And as a teacher now, I, get the opportunity to really to lean in and get to know each and every single student. They have small class sizes, and that's been a blessing because I get to interact and get to know each and every child and see them and their uniqueness and the way that God designed them and see the way they play outside. It is just a fun blessing.
That is super cool. So for moms that may be like, okay, I want to dive into going outside, but I am so used to sitting in front of the TV. How do I do that? And how
Hmm.
can I make this enjoyable for my kids and for myself? Because I know, like, especially if you've got
Yeah.
toddlers, there can be a big pushback, and then you're sitting there and they're crying at the window and staring at you.
Yeah.
Like, what is your suggestions for parents just getting started? Like, I know you were
Yeah.
talking about earlier about like just little bit by little bit,
Hmm.
but what if there's like a
Hmm.
huge resistance? Do you have any advice for
Yeah.
parents with that?
Yes. I mean, last year, 2 years ago, my youngest, well, he was probably 2 or 3. He said, I hate going outside. Here I am, the mom that's trying to get everybody outside. And he just like put his foot down and exercised his free will and made a declaration of like, I hate going outside. And so, you know what? Are we all in the best moods 100% of the time? Absolutely not. There are days that the outdoors just doesn't fit into your day. But I would suggest, like I said, just finding small pockets of your time. And if you have toddlers, or if you have 3 kids under a certain age, like when we were starting out, it was me prioritizing taking the 2 big kids out when the baby went down for a nap. And it was maybe 10 or 15 minutes in the driveway doing just chalk play. And then I'd have to come inside, I don't know, maybe check the baby or do laundry or something. But it was just kind of building in these 10 to 15-minute pockets of our day where we could be outside, where it was having a snack outside. Because I'll be honest, like every little kid loves snacks. So just bring it
Oh yeah.
outside. That way you don't have to clean anything inside. Just bring it
Preach, yeah.
outside. And even, I mean, we live in Michigan, so we're used to colder temperatures. My kids are out 40 degrees. If it's like 40 degrees in the spring is like a warm day for us. So we're like, I'm taking them outside. We're having a snack outside, having meals outside, taking the baby. Like I would just have my baby's high chair outside and we would just have a family meal. I'm like, great. If the food's on the ground, I don't care. The animals will
Oh
take care of
yeah.
it because I don't have to wipe up. I don't have to get on my hands and knees and wipe it up off the floor. And then also one way that I've been, talking a lot more about and can be such an easy way to foster curiosity is to read to your kids. I know,
Mm.
as a homeschooler, reading is so, so important. And it's one of the easiest things that you can do to invoke and spark curiosity for the outdoors. Pick rich classical books, just books that are rich in beautiful imagery, rich in language. And there's been so many books that we've read that are about kids that are just having simple, good old fashioned fun outside. And my kids love to hear those stories. And I think for them, it sparks like ideas of what they can do outside. So if you're having resistance, I would say, one, it's totally normal. And two, just keep trying. As a parent, we have the wisdom to know, and we've been given, the power of discernment to know what is good for our kids and to lead them down a path of choosing what is good for them, and helping them to recognize that there are some things that are just there are some things that are just better than others, right? Like getting outside is a better option than sitting in front of the TV, or reading a good book together on the couch is more enriching for our mind and our bodies and our spirits than being in front of the TV for prolonged periods of time. So I think for those parents who are getting resistance, you'll get that. Just know that you're going to
Mm.
get it. And not every day looks the same, right? Not every
Mm.
day. There are seasons where my kids are sick, and when we're sick, it's like, okay, I got to cut off the TV at some point because your eyes need to rest. But when we're sick, it's kind of like anything goes. And I just know the good thing is now I have the wisdom to know how to like reset us. And a lot of times the reset is just going cold turkey from screens and saying to my kids, we watched a lot because we were sick, we weren't feeling well, we didn't have much energy to do anything. But now that we're getting better, let's go sit outside. Like the sun is so healing, and it just, God created, you know, the sun to not only give us warmth, but to provide certain nutrients that we can't get sometimes through our food or not enough of. So let's go sit outside, and it'll be for 5 minutes, then we can come back inside. And so just again, starting small and being realistic, like your kids best, and when you can say, hey, like, I know you don't want to do this, but I'm your mom, I'm the parent, and this is something that's kind of a non-negotiable. We're going to get outside, we're going to do it, and then afterwards you have the option to do this or that. Because my kids, certainly, there are plenty of times where they're not wanting to go outside, but it's usually a couple things here or there. I start to offer some snacks or getting outside and spending time outside with them, filling their cup, having that connection with them, and then kind of backing away. So for any parent, I think, who's having that resistance, try a few of those things, like connecting with your kid outside. And then if you really want to help them develop those independent outdoor play skills, I always say just start stepping back, start kind of removing yourself. And it's okay to let your kids wrestle with boredom. It's okay to let your kids wrestle with the uncomfortableness of, mom wants us out here and I don't really want to be here. And sorry, like, we're going to be out here for a few minutes. And I always say something like, I can't wait to see what you do, or I wonder what you're going to get into. I'm really looking forward to hearing it. And then back away and be okay with the fact that they might wrestle, but that's good for them. Boredom really breeds creativity, ingenuity, and our kids need more boredom these days, right?
That's so good. That's so true. They really do need more boredom. Oh my goodness. Because I mean, my goodness, even for myself, the things I get into in a bored moment, which is so rare these days now that I'm a mom. But dude, you can create all kinds of stuff at that point. So with the My Outdoorsy Mom, what inspired you to start sharing your story?
Yeah, that's a great question. I kind of got to this point. I mean, I was still I was definitely out of the three under three, just blur and haze. And I had worked for 11 years in corporate America, and I stepped away to stay home once my youngest was born. And we were fortunate enough, and God provided a way for us to be able to do that. And it certainly came with sacrifice, right? Like, there's something to say about going from two incomes going down to one income. I just kept, and my husband was supportive, and I just truly believe, like, God would provide a way. Like, God would provide a way for our finances. And it was a complete blessing that I was able to then stay home with the kids. And it's funny because if you would have asked me, and I remember explicitly having a conversation with friends about, what can I do for work? Like, what excites me? What am I passionate about? And I think I had just kind of come out of that haze of newborn infancy. And I kind of felt like, gosh, I don't know what I enjoy anymore, right? I don't know. I have been breastfeeding for years. I've been pregnant for years. I have been pouring my heart into shepherding young children. And gosh, I don't remember what it is that I enjoy. And so my husband and we got to talking, and I said, I want to do something creative. Like, I just can't imagine myself going back into the corporate setting, but I want to do something creative. And it was actually my husband that said, whatever it is, it's got to be something that you really enjoy and that you could talk about for days and days, and you would never get tired of talking about, or you'd never get tired of creating or doing whatever it is. And as a millennial parent who was kind of already sharing, like, the things that we were doing or the adventures or the things that we were getting into outside, it kind of felt like a natural extension to create a space that was, again, sharing what we were doing outside, how we were living life outside, or some of these fun places that we would find. And so I think it might have been my husband who came up with the My Outdoorsy Mom. When we talked through this idea, I said, absolutely. Like, I could talk for days about child development outdoors. I could talk for days about, especially after reading that book, There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather. I could talk for days about, why we need to be getting our families outside more, our kids outside more. And so that was kind of like the birthplace of My Outdoorsy Mom, was just having this platform to inspire, to encourage moms to get families outside more, and to let them know that you don't have to be climbing mountains every weekend, and if that's you and that's where you live, like, I love that for you, right? I'm like,
Yeah.
I live in suburban Michigan, and it's flat everywhere. We have a lot of water, which is a lot of fun, but I'm not the outdoorsy mom that's hiking or even camping every weekend. We are simply hanging out in our backyard, and we are enjoying each other's company in our home, outside, and just finding pockets of our day to just be outside together and to create memories that way. So that was really my desire, was to inspire families and moms to get outside, to enjoy nature wherever their feet were.
That's awesome, dude. And so my Outdoorsy Mom started at what point? Like, at what point were you, how far along were you into this journey when you began
Yeah.
sharing?
I mean, gosh, it's 2025 now. I think I only started my Instagram account in fall of 2023. So my youngest was about 2.5, 3 years old. And again, I was kind of coming out of that newborn, definitely the newborn haze. I was coming out of, him being a 2-year-old. And I started to think, like what can I do? Like what truly, like what gifts has God given me that, or talents or just passions that I want to share or that I have the ability to share. And I actually have a background in kinesiology. So my undergrad degree was kinesiology. So I've always had a heart for like physical therapists, occupational therapists, because a lot of my
Oh,
education
that's
was centered
cool.
around that. Yeah. And I had internships with PTs and OTs. And so I have such a heart for that profession and, just the way they serve patients. And so I think just kind of how that incorporated into what I do now is like, I mean, I have a lot of followers who are occupational therapists, physical therapists, and I love talking about like the mechanics of kids play, right? Or just
Mhm.
even, the things like risky play. And I have a kid who loves to spin and spin and spin and spin. Like he never, hardly ever gets sick. And it's just kind of, he desires, and he's a sensory seeker. He desires that vestibular input, that in spinning and doing heavy work. And it's a way of my child seeking sensory input that he's not ordinarily getting from his environment. So I just find all of that fascinating. I am a kind of a science geek at heart. So it was a beautiful marriage of all of these things, from my education to real life practicalness of being a mom and seeing it playing out before my eyes. And so that's really kind of like where it all started. And it was just in the beginning, I mean, I was just sharing fun ideas, where we were going, sharing encouragement with moms. And soon after I started it, I began to feel a nudge, like I would love to encourage moms in a more long form way. And several people had told me, you should start a podcast. You should start a podcast. And I'm like, I don't have time to start a podcast. I don't know anything about podcasting. And, all of these thoughts filled my brain. Like, who would listen to my podcast? And I just remember thinking, back then, having those thoughts like, who would listen to my podcast, and realizing like that is the enemy trying to hold me back from sharing a message that I think parents want to hear, they need to hear. And it's just that, you can get outside wherever you are and enjoy God's creation, enjoy what he truly created for us, no matter where you are. And so it took several months. I mean, from the time I first had the thought of creating a podcast to the actual launch of it was like well over a year. I sat on the idea for many, many months, and I just kept saying, oh, and now is not the right time. There's never a good time to do any of this. And so I just
Yeah.
had to pick a date and say, this is when it's going to go live, and it's going to happen. And it did. And by the grace of God, he ordered my days and my time to make it all happen. But it just, yeah, it kind of, one thing kind of snowballed into another. And here I am now, a content creator and, I don't know, a podcast producer, much like yourself, right? Wearing many hats, but it's been a really fun ride. And I'm sure, we talked a little bit about it before, but just getting to connect with so many women in a more long form fashion and having discussions that, for whatever reason, we're just not able to have like in our daily lives, right? And
Oh,
to
yeah.
hear the stories of so many other women who have these passions and who also love and appreciate the outdoors and are trying to infuse that into their family's life, and also the things that they've created from it. I have a guest who started a garden coaching business. Like
Oh, that's cool.
she didn't grow up a gardener, but now she has this business where she's coaching families and how to grow their own herbs and food straight from their garden, right? So it's been a really beautiful ride of connecting with women. And boy, I mean, the guests that I've had for season 1 have just been like just incredible to talk with and to hear their stories. And I just know that, listeners are going to be inspired and encouraged by their stories too.
For sure, for sure. And dude, that is super cool. And I love, like, you have so much content that you can share on that topic, especially seeking other people. And you're right, in our day and age, intentional conversation is so hard
Yes.
to find, especially about the topics we're really passionate about, you know?
Yes.
So, dude, that is super cool. Okay, for everybody listening, if you haven't listened, you should go listen. And it's The Outdoorsy Mom, right?
It's the My Outdoorsy Mom podcast.
There we go. There we go.
Yes.
And I've listened to the first part of the first episode. I'm still like in my listening phase because I will go back and forth. But just from what I've heard, it's super encouraging. And I don't know, all of Julianne's content has been a blessing because as soon as you see it, you're like, oh, dude, I need to go take my kids outside for a few minutes and there's not this ginormous goal in mind where it feels
Mhm,
daunting. There's not this
mhm.
heavy load and burden that you feel when you just listen to Julianne speak. It's just this, you can do it even if it's for a little bit of time, along and along. And I feel like some of that unpressured emphasis is so needed in this day and age, especially. So that's super. I'm so excited for you. This is so
Thank
super cool.
you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's just as I think about like raising my kids, and we're just bombarded with an opportunity to fill their schedule at every which way we turn. And I don't know if you feel it, but I feel it like we could sign our kids up for things all day long, right? And we could have every single minute of their day planned. And this season of life, I'm really trying to just prioritize their need for unrestricted outdoor play and not having too many commitments because I think they feel the stress of those commitments too. And
Oh,
like
for
you said,
sure.
just this not having pressure, especially for them at such a young age to be somewhere, I
Oh,
had kind of this moment last year where, we had the opportunity to sign my oldest up for a couple of things. And she said to me, I just don't want to be in a rush to go anywhere after school. I said, absolutely, noted. Okay, we won't do that because she values her time outside too. Like she is the kid that as soon as she gets home, and they've been outside plenty at school already. And boy, having the blessing of being there during the school day, I see how hard these kids play. And it brings a smile to my face. They are kicking up dust and dirt and they're picking up all the soil. And I mean, I love how hard they play. But even when she comes home, it's a way for her to regulate and to kind of unwind from being at school is just to get out in the backyard and to create her own fun. And so I really want to respect that for my kids and prioritize and give them space in their life and in their day to just have time where it's not scheduled and they're moving at their own pace and they're getting a chance to just to be outside however they want to be.
that's awesome. Dude, I have one more question and it's in regards to your okay, say what your degree was in. Like you did occupational therapy, right?
So my background, my degree was in kinesiology. I
Uh-huh.
originally my dream was to become a physical therapist. And you know what, at that time during my college years, they had added like you had to go back and get like your doctorate for the
Oh
degree.
wow.
And I had student loans and it was also when I graduated, it was, I don't know, during the recession. It was during one of the recessions. And I said, I got to start working. And so I worked in a corporate setting for 11 years. But even in that setting, it was still in the medical industry. And so it was a big part of my career was just being in the sciences. So I always say it kind of fulfilled the science geek in me or just the part that loved like research articles and things like that. So that was my background before I started working was kinesiology was my undergrad degree.
I bet that's super cool though to watch your kids play and see the benefits physically that carries over into, especially with you having that background knowledge. How much have you seen that intertwine into what you do every day?
Absolutely. I think some of my most fun conversations are and interactions online are with the PTs and the OTs that follow me
Uh-huh.
because I have such an appreciation for and I can see through that lens of how my kids move and how they seek certain experiences, and how each kid plays differently, but also how like my daughter plays differently than my son. One of my kids is a sensory seeker, so he's more drawn to moving at fast speeds, jumping from high heights. And he's definitely a risky play type of kid and he's seeking these kind of like almost dangerous experiences, but he's doing them like confidently. So it's really been just a great extension of kind of that knowledge and education from my life before children to now having and raising three kids and to seeing how that all plays out from a physical standpoint, from a social and emotional learning standpoint. I could talk on and I love talking with, those who are like nature-based educators, teachers, PTs and OTs just about the development of the early childhood development, right? Both mind and body. And I think it's just so fascinating.
That's super cool. That is super cool. And I think it's super neat how God just kind of intertwines our stories to have these really like profound moments of like, okay, God, this is why you created this world the way that you did, so that your son
Hmm.
can have that moment of just like jumping off from the tallest place. And I've listened to Joel Salatin. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him or not.
Yes.
And he talks about just the benefits of being in the soil, actually touching it,
Hmm.
and how awesome the creator is. It makes our world seem so like controllable when we're in these
Hmm.
buildings all day long. You step outside into a wide open space and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm so small in the face of such a big creator.
Hmm.
And so, just hearing you talk about that, especially like in relation to your kids, like how each
Hmm.
individual kid with different needs can find their place out in nature. That is super
Yeah.
cool. Super cool.
And that's something too I want to just kind of invoke and cement in my kids is that like God is all around us, right? Like you don't have to climb to a mountaintop to see God. He can meet you underneath the tree in our backyard. He can
Oh
meet
yeah.
you in a gentle breeze, like, and it's just that God is all, I mean, at the heart of it, I want to spend time outside, but ultimately it's like I want to show them like how big our create, like what, how big and mighty and powerful he is, yet he wants a relationship with us, right? And even in his powerfulness, and he seeks a relationship with us, and he also desires to know us, right? He
Mm.
desires for us to know him, and that of all the things he created, right? He created everything that we see around us, and he created you and me, right? Like
Mm.
that there is just for them to know and understand that there is something bigger and more powerful than them and what's in and of this world, and that is God, and that his son came down for us, and that what we see here on earth is beautiful, but what we have waiting for us in heaven is just far beyond comprehension. And I love that they're starting to learn and really understand that and have that cemented in their soul in a way that I didn't really have as a kid. And so that is my deep, deep desire is that through nature they would come to know and love Jesus, and to know and love, to know that God created all of this that they see around them, but that God created them too.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh my goodness. Yes. Man, and it's so funny. I take my kid out, I mean, all of my kids out every single day, and they see so many things out in nature, and they're like, Mom, how could God create this and then this?
Hmm.
And that's, I don't know, that is super cool.
Yeah.
So Julianne, any encouragement for the homeschool mom? Because as you know, a lot of these moms that are probably listening are homeschool parents. Any advice for how to infuse nature into learning?
Yes. Oh, you know what? I mean, what a great ministry. Like you have so many opportunities to infuse learning. I had a conversation with somebody else earlier today in that the things that you're trying, the things and the subjects that we think about, and most often we think about teaching around a table can easily be taken outside. Whether it's, when you think about math, it's like, okay, we can certainly learn math on paper, but how beautiful is it to go outside and to number the trees that we see, or to number the leaves, or to collect 5 acorns, and to have these, like I'm sure you're familiar with, but like just manipulatives, like in your hand, that are tactile, that can support your learning. And so just take as much as you can outside. I mean, take as much as you can, whether it's reading or math, or, there's just so many things that you can do. And if getting outside as a part of your learning day isn't something that you're doing now, start building it in small chunks of time. I mean, you can do read alouds outside. Your children, if they're grown and can read on their own, you all can have family reading time outside. I mean, if nothing else, just read, and you can read inside, you can read outside. My kids, I mean, my daughter, gosh, she will find any place outside and just like plop down with a book. So, build it into your day in these small pockets of time. And as you make that a consistent part of your day, you will see that time grow and grow, and you'll see the fruit of your labor and getting them outside and cajoling them outside, or, with the promise of snacks or other things. But it's just, staying consistent. And I promise you, you will see the fruit of that work, and you'll see it. It may be years from now, as I am, but you will see it. It will be there if you plant those seeds now of just building outdoor time into your daily rhythms. And it doesn't have to be for long periods of time. Just do it when you can, and you will see the fruit of that work.
Praise the Lord, dude. That's awesome. So, Julianne, at the end of every episode, I like to ask, what is one book that has shaped you and made you into who you are today? Just as lifelong learners, and you seem like, oh my goodness, you seem so much more like a lifelong learner. You're going from working in corporate America to being a stay-at-home mom and educating so many young minds, which is such a blessing. Oh my goodness, that is super cool. But just it could be any book, any genre, doesn't have to hit any specific stack of
Yes.
books
Oh
or whatever.
gosh. I would say two that I'm reading or rereading recently. I can't just pick one because it's just I have so many. I'm the kind of reader that I read a couple of different things at the same time.
Same,
and people say like, how do you ever finish anything? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know how I ever finish anything, but it's a really like kind of frantic way to read. Something that I'm rereading as I, prepare my podcast episodes, but it's a book called Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom. She is an occupational therapist, and she is the founder of Timber Nook, which is a nature-based schooling. And she just has such compelling evidence for unrestricted outdoor play, why it makes for strong, confident, capable children, and why we really need to be prioritizing it for our kids. It's just something that I keep turning to over and over again over the years. It's one of the few books that I've been turning more to like my Kindle lately and borrowing books through the like Libby app, but Balanced and Barefoot is a book that I own. It's one of those books that I have highlighted all throughout, and it is, especially if you're new to getting outside or just kind of learning why kids need to be getting outside more, that is a great place to start. I love that book. And then more recently, I am reading Mama Bear Apologetics. Have you read it?
Oh, but I've heard of it. Is it good?
Yes. So I'm just in the very beginning of it, and it's been on my list for many years to read, but it is really just kind of emphasizing the importance of teaching our kids like how to defend our faith, how to defend the faith, right? And it's not just one thing to believe in Jesus and to be reading our Bible, but also to know how to articulate and to defend our faith and to provide the evidence that Jesus was real, he was here, he died on the cross for our sins. And I had a recent conversation with a friend who's not a believer, and gosh, it was the nudge from the Lord to say like, yeah, you got to be in this book, you got to be in your Bible, you got to be in this book to really to know and to be able to articulate why it is that you believe in Jesus, right? And the book was the good stoke for me to be understanding of that, and how can I teach my kids to articulate their faith and to defend the faith and to just have a conversation with others about why they believe in Jesus, right? Why they believe that he really came in the form of man and he came and died for us and our sins. So that is something new. I'm in the very beginnings of it, but it's Mama Bear Apologetics. And yeah, those are the two things that, Balanced and Barefoot is something I've been rereading over and over for the last few years. And then this is kind of a new one that's really kind of ignited this fire under me to make sure that I'm having these conversations with my children about, not just them understanding who Jesus was, but why we believe that he came down for us.
That there's evidence and you can clearly see it.
Yeah.
Like it's not just nature, but like history, historical, all of
There's
that.
historical evidence. Absolutely. There's historical evidence to prove that he was real, that he lived on earth as man, and how to articulate that. And, my kids are young. So it's like kind of planting those lessons in little appropriate, age appropriate ways, but to continue to have those conversations over and over so that they can one day articulate, why it is they believe what they believe.
That is super cool. I'm going to have to pick up that book because that's something that I'm currently like, and I know in media and all that, it's been a big topic of like, Jesus is real. Like, and a lot of people are coming to faith because they're seeing the evidence. And so, yeah, that's good. That's good. Well, Julianne, is there any last words, any last bits of encouragement you'd like to give to anybody that is, that's listening?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It has been a blessing to kind of follow along your journey and to follow along, your podcasting journey. And I would just say, just to get outside. I mean, it is as simple as that, to keep going, to press on, even when it's hard, and even when you've had seasons where you haven't been outside, and even if you've had seasons that have felt very indoorsy. The beauty of it is you can step right outside of your door, and it's nature. It's always there. It's always there for you to enjoy and for you to find comfort in, and just to keep pressing on. The seeds that you plant now in your kids by getting them outside, I promise you will bear that fruit one day, and it will be so sweet to see. So just keep getting outside, keep going.
That's awesome. Well, if you want to go follow Julianne, her Instagram page is My Outdoorsy Mom. Is there any other places that we can find you outside of your podcast, which is the My Outdoorsy Mom podcast? Anything else where we can find you?
I have a blog. It's myoutdoorsymom.com. I often link my blog in my show notes of the podcast, and it's linked on my Instagram bio. So you can find me in those 3 places.
Awesome. And we'll include it in the show notes as well so people can find you a little easier. Well, Julianne, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening to the Home Edify podcast. All literature, book recommendations, and websites mentioned in today's show will be linked in the details below. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And don't forget to follow along on Instagram at Home Edify Podcast to enjoy clips from our latest episodes and day-to-day encouragement. Our prayer is that you were inspired to seek after your child's heart and mind. Thanks again for listening.
So, Mom, are you done with your podcast?
Yeah, I learned so much.
Thanks for coming to the podcast. Bye.